I'm very glad to present what BPI France is doing in terms of social economy support. I'll first introduce briefly BPI France, then explain what the situation of social economy in France briefly, and there's been new law 2 years ago. And then I will detail what we've experienced over the past 2 to 3 years. So first, BPI France. We've been created 3 years ago by the merger of 3 entities in France. And for now, we, in terms of activity, we deploy 25 billion euros of financing per year. This represents approximately 30 trillion won. And it represents 70,000 clients, representing themselves 1,300,000 jobs in France. We only focus on companies, enterprises. We do not finance individuals. And our motto is Servir l'avenir, which means serve the future. Some figures about BPI France. There are a little bit more than 2,500 employees, and we have local offices. I'm just going briefly to those cases, just to focus on the one on the left here. We have 8 business lines, going from loans. We provide loans to companies. We guarantee banks that finance small and medium enterprises. We have also an export insurance activity. We have an activity specific to support innovation through grants, reimbursable advances, and also venture capital investments. We invest in equity in small companies, in medium and large companies as well. We have finally, in terms of investment, a fund-of-fund activity where we invest in funds themselves investing into French small and medium companies. And finally, we've had a new business line recently developed that's called business support that aims at training and provide consulting to entrepreneurs. And the second block I'd like to briefly detail the way we are operating. We're an investment bank, but we're public. But we work with private banks systematically. We co-finance. Each time we provide loans, each time we deploy €1, there is a €1 loan from a private bank. We co-invest with private investor, and we support partnerships with private players. Secondly, we are a public sector bank focusing on the market failures, and we try to correct those failures, and I will explain briefly how we do that, or we want to do that. We're a full-service bank. We're one of the systemic banks in Europe, and we're supervised by the European Central Bank. The focus I want to, before going into the social economy itself, I wanted to briefly explain our industrial sector strategy. We basically focus on 2 key issues. First, the transition, with 2 transitions, the ecological transition and the digital transition. And this is the first block of focus for our activity. Secondly, we support the traditional industries in their transformation. And we have 6 key industries there: health industry, transportation, tourism, creative industries, agribusiness, and social economy. This is where it falls. And this is how we take this industry. We want to accompany the transformation of this industry. Then what we do in terms of activity, here's a quite complex graph. This is called a Bain graph because it summarizes on the horizontal axis. You have all the 8 key industries we have. And the larger the column is, the higher our intensity, our activity is in this specific sector. And on the vertical axis, you have our products going from the, I would say, plain vanilla product, which is guarantee, short-term loans, and investment loans. This is a business where we co-finance or we guarantee banks for standard loans, up to very qualitative and specific activity coming from unsecured loan to innovation financing up to private equity. And these graphs show us three things on social economy. First, for now in our activity it's quite limited. You see it's aggregated a bit more than 300 million, where our other key sectors are, accumulate more than 1 billion intervention usually per year. Secondly, what's very interesting is that the share of innovation in this sector is quite important. And I think this lays back to, especially for cooperatives, the fact that they tend to distribute less dividends than commercial companies make them invest more into their business. And this is mostly a technological innovation. And we'll come back later to social innovation, but for now, we mostly finance technological innovation. The third point I want to make here is on equity. You see in equity there is a very limited share of activity in equity for this social economy. This is not due to a lack of demand. This is clearly due to our need to adapt our activity to the specifics of this economy, and this is what we try to do. And I'll show you that. Then coming to the situation of the social economy in France. First, the social economy is quite a big, it's considered a big sector in France. It represents more than 10% of GDP and 12% of employment. So this is a key focus for the government, especially for the new government we had in 2012. And this new government established a law in 2014 with the aim to accelerate the development of social economy and the rational, of course, employment, as well as managing social issues like regional competition and employment, and solidarity and social cohesion. And the way the law was structured, it focused on three key blocks. The first block was, to focus on widening and clarifying the definition of social economy, including the, I'd say, status economy, including association and cooperatives, but including as well commercial companies accepting some restriction in terms of dividend distribution, corporate governance, implying to make sure that the salaries are implicated into the governance of the companies. And third point, they accept a limit of salaries for the managers of the company. So with those points, then the second step was improving the coordination between the many players in this field, both historical and new stakeholders in social economy. So with this law, it clarifies the role of all those players, and it has set up a committee to coordinate the action of all those players. And third, and this is where Bpifrance is mostly involved, the government wanted to increase the amount of public financing, and actually we share the same situation as the US. The social economy was mostly supported by grants from the government or local authorities, and over the past years it's been decreasing hugely. So there is a key issue of changing the way this economy is financed from grants up to financing. And then the question is, how do we want to finance this specific sector? With this objective of the law, Bpifrance was asked for 4 key mandates. The first is to, as I said, increase the amount of financing available for social businesses. The second is to support the social innovation, which is key in terms of specifics of the social economy, and this is something we don't find that clearly in the, I'd say, commercial industry as such. The third mandate we had is to enhance the French impact investing market. And fourth is to contribute to the knowledge of the social economy sector. And I didn't make this point, but this is a sector in France that is not very well monitored. We don't have very strong figures. Even when I mentioned the 10% of GDP figure, it's just an estimate. I mean, the government has not built yet a strong monitoring system for the social economy itself. So we'll participate to build that in the coming years. Those 4 mandates, how we deployed them. The first pillar, we have 3 pillars in our strategy towards social economy. The first pillar is to act in complementarity with the historical market player. We have professional organizations, we have credit unions, we have cooperative banks in France, mutualist banks, and our aim was not to replace them, of course. It was really to work with them and to support them, for them to bring more financing into the social economy. The second pillar is through our activity, to make sure our general offer, not targeted specifically as social economy, but as commercial business, is well understood and marketed to social economy players. And we'll come back to this, just this work of explaining and orienting our general offer, our commercial offer, towards the social economy made us a huge increase in terms of activity. And the third pillar was for very specific market failure, to define dedicated products, going from small unsecured loan to social innovation funds with grants and reimbursable advances to specifically finance social innovation. Then we built some funds both for historical players like cooperative and associations to strengthen their equity. And we develop, as our mandate asks us, impact investment fund targeting specifically social issues, and with an objective for those 3 pillars to remain very simple and not to add another layer of complexity. So this is a bit complementary to so before the law, we started this work, and as you see, from 2012 up to 2015, we more than doubled our activity support to the social economy. And we did this through our general offer, because our specific products were only created in 2015, so they don't have an impact yet on the figures. So this is the first lesson we've learned, just trying to focus on this specific sector, and having our distribution channels aware that a product we have in general offer can finance a cooperative or an association, just able to double our activity in this sector. And then we had, when we look at which type of companies we finance, this is mostly historical social economy type of companies. Half of the companies we financed were associations, and half of them were cooperatives. And out of the cooperative, 40% of the cooperative we financed were in the agricultural field. A second point we saw in terms of looking at the beneficiaries of our intervention was that 86% were micro-enterprise, meaning enterprise of less than 10 employees, which was one of the targets initially, and which is not always simple, as we only have 2,000 employees, which is not, I mean, compared to a large bank in France like Société Générale or BNP, it's only a very small, a limited number of staff. Then, to complement this general offer, we built 5 key initiatives specifically targeting the demands that was not addressed by the financing markets. The first was the Social Innovation Fund. The objective was to support socially innovative projects who were economically sustainable. And what we did is we structure reimbursable advances. What is reimbursable advances? It's kind of very specific to France. We just provide at the beginning of the project maybe 100,000 euro. If the project fails, we don't ask for reimbursement. If there is a commercial success, then we ask for reimbursement. And this is very incentive for the companies to innovate. The capacity of this fund is 20 million, and we worked with the regions and the local players. And basically what we did is BPI France is assessing the economical strength of the project of France, and the local partners just assess the local and social impact of the project. With a key dimension on that, of course, the impact itself. Does it address non-addressed demand, social demand? But also we have dimension like, does it involve local stakeholders? We don't want projects that are not included into the local environment. So this is one of the criteria we use in the Social Innovative Fund. So it's been launched in 2015. It's been quite a success. For now we have 40 projects, and we intend to finance more than 100 this year. The second mechanism we designed was a co-guarantee scheme with Sogama, that is a French guarantee institution specialized into associations and cooperatives. And what we wanted is to give more gunpowder to this institution. And what we did is just a co-guarantee scheme that enabled Sogama to double its activity. And thus to support mostly mutualist bank and cooperative bank to provide more loans to the social economy enterprise, because they were guaranteed for part of the loan. The third point, and I have to be honest, this has not been a success for now. We've tried to develop a specific unsecured loan for the social economy players. And what we found out is that actually they were, in terms of loan financing, the social economy, at least in France, is quite correctly covered. And it did not necessarily need a new loan. And we've marketed the loan for a year, and commercially it's not been a success. So we are currently considering either to transform this loan or to totally stop the commercialization of this loan. And the two last issues or initiatives we had is the Cooperative Impact Fund. So this is a 74 million euro fund aimed at strengthening the equity of the cooperatives. As you may know, in France, and it's the same of most in Europe, there are very few investors that are inclined to invest into cooperatives. And what we wanted is to we've selected an investment firm with private standard in terms of governance, and we've tried to motivate private investors who accept to diminish their expectations in terms of return, and accept to be longer in terms of duration of investment. And we mobilize them to provide funds to this general partner managing this fund. And it's been quite a success. We brought 20 million euros, and the 54 other millions were brought by either institutional investors or banks, including private banks and private commercial banks and cooperative banks as well. And the last part I wanted to make on the specific, we've tried as well to develop the impact investing. In France, the impact investing is very less developed than in the US, for example, because there is a lack of institutional investors inclined to invest in it. So what we did again is trying to structure an environment that is favorable to this institutional investor, trying to select general partner investment firms that were inclined to build social investment, impact investment funds, and we've already invested 60 million since 2009 in this field, and we want to develop that further with private investors once again. So in terms of key, as you see, we don't have the length, the historical length of CDF5, for example, but what we see from our 3 to 4 year experience is that first, there is a huge job to do from commercial banks to just accept or market their offer towards social economy. And part of the answer of financing social economy is there. Second, there is a strong need to train both the entrepreneurs and the staff within the banks to just understand the specifics of social economy. And it's both ends. First, it may be more, I mean, when you see a business plan for a social economy company, it's usually far more conservative than a commercial business. But the difference is that usually it's stronger in terms of capacity to achieve the business plan and capacity to absorb an external crisis. So there is really a need to strengthen the commercial staff of the banks. And actually, we are training currently our own staff to do that. And secondly, there is a need to train the entrepreneurs themselves, the social economy entrepreneurs, because often, I mean, for the historical ones, they used to rely once again on the entrepreneurs. Not all of them are culturally aware of what the banks need in terms of information or what they want. And secondly, they see like other commercial companies also to open to respond, just to challenge what they're doing in terms of those impacts of their activity, from the social impact, and also in terms of